We get in our own mindset, and we're our own worst enemy. I need to be perfect. I just need to provide value and provide solutions. So building the systems and then just implementing them. Once I had that mindset shift,
Welcome to episode 8 of Mike Dropp. Today I am with Chris Kerr. Chris, how are you?
Michael, I'm well.
So Chris, let me ask you a question. What got you into this crazy game of real estate?
Well, it was kind of a unique journey. I was a product and marketing guy in my past life, and I've always loved architect and design. But honestly, when my wife and I bought our first house together, we had a terrible transaction. And I said to her, I'm like, if this person can do it, I can certainly be a lot better than that individual. And they were extremely successful. So I actually had my midlife crisis at 40, and I said, honey, I'm going to be a real estate agent.
And how did your wife feel? Because I think, one of the things for a lot of agents as they transition from one job to another is obviously having the support of your spouse. How was that, at least initially? Because for a lot of people, initially, their spouses aren't quite as happy as they are.
Yeah, I mean, it was a conversation. I basically told her, I was like, I'm thinking about making a career change, and we talked through it. And I said, I'm going through a midlife crisis. And I said, you got two options. I could either buy a convertible sports car, coming home smelling like strippers, or I'm going to change careers. And so I'm driving the same vehicle, and she supported my decision. So, no, but we talked through it, and we knew, the challenges of, what it's going to be the next couple of years. But we were on the same page, and it's good because now she's my motivation because she's willing to let me do my dream.
Right, that's beautiful.
So, yeah.
So let me ask you something. When you were outside of real estate getting in, what did you imagine you would get in real estate? Because I always hear people that say, I want to get into real estate for freedom. I want to get into real estate for, to work less. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, you hear the same stories. I got into real estate so I could have more time. I could spend more time with my family. And I think, too, there's a disconnect between reality, and especially with like those programs like $1 Million Listing and all these avenues where people just see the shiny behind the scenes, and they don't see the in the trenches and what it takes to really be disciplined and put the work in to start your business and grow your business. So
no, I couldn't agree with you more. So let me ask you, what was it like your first year in real estate?
It was like Ray Charles leading the blind. I'm very well with engaging and talking with people, and I had a really big spear, so I leaned in heavy on my spear, and so that kind of helped balance kind of the business. And then looking to scale was, all right, how do I find new pillars to find new clients, new business? And that's when I started looking at coaching and looking at how do I strengthen my weaknesses and make those skills more powerful.
And how did you determine the company that you worked for?
So it was kind of unique. I'm fortunate. I live just south of Boston, so I get the best of both worlds. I get the city and I get the suburbs. And so I started with a smaller brokerage just because they were more localized. And I got that one-on-one attention that I was trying to get as I started into the business. And then once I got into it, I did make a change into a new brokerage, and it's been a great change for me because it's located more in the city. So I, again, get to focus on the city business, but also living in the burbs. So I get the best of both worlds.
Right. Now, before you got into real estate, you played golf competitively, correct? Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I grew up playing golf. My dad was a golf professional. I had a lot of success as a junior golfer, played a little bit collegiately. Unfortunately, I have an illness. I have MS, so it kind of handicapped some of my physical abilities. I still love and play the game, and I'm uber competitive. So my father and I were always battling against each other. And, I take that same kind of mindset into my real estate business too, as I'm very competitive. And, coming down here and spending a couple of days with the prospecting and the phone warriors, it's definitely gets the competitive juices going, seeing your team kind of engaging and, calling out their stats. And it's like, well, shit, he just made 1,000 contacts. I got to up my game,
Right, absolutely.
So it brings out the competitive in you.
So do you think that competitive part helped you in terms of just the mindset of what you need to do to be, a successful agent?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people are afraid of failure, and I think rightfully so. There is that fear, and your body puts up that natural defenses. But I think being a competitive athlete, it just kind of kicks in naturally, and you just want to go out and dominate and do whatever you can to be the best person you can be, whether it's professional or in your daily life and family. And then it's also as you're, especially in golf, you find weaknesses in your game, so you work on those to develop those skills. And it's the same, correlation with business is like you're working on your weaknesses to improve your businesses and your efficiencies. So
Absolutely. Now you decided to kind of go right into the luxury market. What made you decide to go into luxury market versus selling, four or $500,000 houses? Because I think there's a lot of agents out there that sell in the lower price points, but in the upper price points, there's some things in their head where they're like, am I good enough? What was that decision like to try to go into luxury?
yeah, I mean, I think it can be intimidating. A lot of people think luxury and they get overwhelmed and they get maybe a little scared of it. But to me, it's still the normal transaction. The fundamentals are there, whether you're selling a $500,000 home or a $10 million home. The fundamentals and the skill sets are still there. I was very fortunate that I got into the luxury business because of my SOI. I had a lot of contacts that were very successful, and I was able to, utilize those individuals and get into those luxury price points fairly early in my career, and then you just try to scale those and grow one transaction into 10.
Right. So let me ask you, in the first couple of years, what do you think are some things that you really did well looking back at the beginning of your career?
I mean, my strength's product marketing. So marketing is, one of the easiest things for me. So I leaned in heavily on that, especially with social. I knew how to create and develop a brand. So brand was very important for me. And that's one way that you can make yourself different from your competition. I see a lot of agents that work for these national brands, whether it's Keller Williams, EXP, blah, blah, blah. They all use the same resources. So what I did, even though I work with a national brand, it was like, how do I make my brand different? So I'm not using the same assets. I may be using the same content and message, but I'm redeveloping, utilizing the CK Group brand to make it stand out. So you're not just getting lost in, the mass communication of the same kind of content.
Right. So your first year, what kind of production were you able to do?
Well, I started with COVID, so it was a challenging year. I have 2 kids, so the joke in our family was, I thought I could be a professional real estate agent and homeschool my kids. I learned very quickly I could do neither. So we joke, the family joke is, don't blame Professor Kerr if my kids are still in high school when they're 22 because they failed, 2nd and 3rd grade. So it was a challenge to kind of build the business and develop my kids' education.
Sure.
So I had some early success. Again, just utilizing the network, and we were able to do, I think my first year I did 9 transactions, which, again, I call myself a part-time agent for the first 18 months of my career. So,
what was that like starting in COVID? Obviously, the world's all over the place. From a mindset perspective, I mean, you'd have to take a lot of drugs or drink a lot of alcohol to say, I'm going to be an agent in COVID when people don't want to go outside. What was that decision like, though?
Yeah, it was... It was my wife and I said, what the did we do?
Yeah.
Because literally I started, my first day was April 1st.
Wow.
April 15th, our office shut down.
Right, I remember.
So the world changed and no one knew what the new norm was. So everyone was kind of freaking out. And I just basically leaned in again on my spear and had as many conversations. And a lot of that time was just checking in on people. And, it wasn't even about real estate. It was about, well, what can I do? Do we need groceries? Reaching out to the older population in our communities. How can we help? So it became more a service mindset than it was even about real estate. And luckily, some of those conversations led into opportunities to buy and sell real estate for those people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably one of your strengths is that service mentality. I think people forget that to be a good salesperson at the highest level, you need to stop thinking about sales and start thinking about, like, how do you serve? To serve is nothing more than how do I add more value? The ultimate salesperson is a person that adds more value than anyone else. You see, you add value by asking the right questions. You add value by caring. You add value by doing things that the customer sees as value. Because I see so many agents, they do all these things, but if the customer doesn't see value in what you do, there's no value. And I think that's the problem. Are we doing activities and things that our clients think are valuable? Or are we doing things that we think there's valuable? That's probably one of the biggest distinctions in coaching people is people do all these things that they think from a customer service are valuable, but the customer doesn't. So
Yeah.
going out of your way and doing things that customers really don't have anybody else that does, it really separates you from the other professionals in their life.
Yeah, as a newer, well, just in general, I'm a perfectionist. So as a newer agent, I was always trying to perfect my skills. And I had a quick mindset shift where I just said, you know what, I don't have to be perfect. I just need to care. And my clients will see that my care will elevate the service in the transaction and in the engagement in between each other, because I was always trying to be perfect, and the fear of not being able to answer a question or helping my clients really got into my mindset. And I had that shift, and I was like, you know what? I'm not perfect. It's okay to say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Let me find out and get back to you. But the moment I can show that I'm caring about their whole situation and trying to find solutions to their problems, it helped elevated my business dramatically, because I stopped focus on trying to be perfect and just started being natural.
I mean, I think people trying to be perfect is probably one of the number one things that is the most destructive to agents. I'm not perfect on the phone. I'm not perfect with my clients. I don't do my systems perfect. The thing is, nothing is perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. They're not perfect. God isn't perfect. Like, there's nothing that perfect, but it's interesting that everyone tries to have a standard of perfection. And the problem is that if your standard is perfection, it's a standard that you can never meet, which means you really don't have a standard. I always try to tell people the secret to being a successful person long term is to fall in love with the process, which means progress over perfection, because you can build on progress. When you see progress, that's what makes you happy, because you can see that you're moving closer to your goal. If you have an ideal of perfection, the moment you don't hit it, instead of acknowledging, wow, I did this good, you just simply beat the crap out of yourself. And when you beat yourself up, you never perform at a high level. So how are you able to kind of make that mindset? Because honestly, that shift in mindset literally is the number one thing I see that stops people from succeeding, because they do 2 steps forward, beat the crap out of themselves, and then they beat themselves 4 steps back.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you just said, like, we get in our own mindset, and we're our own worst enemy. And so, I was just able to come to grips and said, like, I don't need to be perfect. I just need to provide value and provide solutions. So, once I had that mindset shift, it was like, all right, I don't need to focus on perfection, because I think when we set ourselves up to try to be perfect, inevitably you're going to fail, and then you're just going to get frustrated with the process, and then you're going to stop doing it. So stop trying to be perfect and just try to get the job done, and then figure out what you can do to improve the process, whether it's communication, negotiations, knowledge, product, skills, whatever it is. You just kind of work on those weaknesses and try to make that next experience better for your next client.
Yeah, I think what you said was so key, because you said the part about failure. You see, you can't build on failure. When you have a standard that is perfection, you're building on failure, because you're always looking at what's wrong, because it's not perfect versus what's right. You see, if all you focus on in your business are all the things that you don't do well, you'll never succeed, because your mindset is one of scarcity and not abundance. If you focus on, wow, you know what, I didn't get the listing, but I at least got the appointment. I made 50 contacts, but I didn't set an appointment. If you're putting in the effort and you're making progress, that is something you can build on. But I'm telling you, one of the most destructive things is to focus all of your energy on what is not going well in your business versus trying to look and say, what is going well? Because, when the market changes, you have to change and adapt. So I know as we've been working together, we obviously have been working on prospecting, scripts, dialogues, objections. How has that process been, trying to get from a place where you're calling your spear to now getting on the phone and actually calling people that are for sale boners, angry, expires, and obviously circle prospecting? Because, when you're used to talking to your database, they're very comfortable conversations. You're pretty certain what's going to happen. When you're prospecting with people you don't know, there's an uncomfortability where you start to get into call reluctance. So tell people a little bit about your process with call reluctance, because I think call reluctance is probably one of the top 2 things that stops people from ever achieving what they want.
Oh, 100%. We all get in our head, and it's like we naturally go back to the things that are easy for us, and then we try to put the things that we need to do, we put it on the back burner, and ultimately it's going to impact your business, and you're not going to have a business. So I think, working with your team and seeing how your team, is very disciplined, and I love the fact, like, when I come down here and do these 2-day prospects, to interact with your team, and they're open and like, hey, I had this objection, how would you handle it? And it's real time. And so I think to go back to answer your question, I think it's just being disciplined and building the systems and then just implementing them. And so I've kind of done the mindset shift is I still open up my conversations with my spear just to get me comfortable.
Right.
I know that I'm going to have an easy conversation and it's going to be enjoyable. And then it may be 2 or 3 conversations, and then I'm going into the expireds right away, and then I'm going into the FISBOs, and then I'm going into circle prospecting, and then I'm calling my spear again. So it's just trusting the processing and just overcoming those fears. And I think once you get the mindset, it's not me. They're not hanging up on me, or they're not, they don't know me, so let me talk through it. And I think even when you get hung up on, it's the best time is just calling them right back and say, I'm sorry, we got disconnected. And if you keep doing it long enough, I've had someone say, how come you're so consistent and thorough with it? And I said, well, they're not angry at me. I said, I guarantee if they hang up and I call them back, they won't even know my name.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like...
It's funny, we literally get hung up on and we think that they actually remember us. It's so funny when my agents, they'll literally talk to someone today and then they'll say, call back in a month. And I'll literally call them back the next day and say, hey, I spoke to you a couple weeks ago, and go right in, and they literally don't remember because we literally are not as important as we think we are. So many people think that when the sellers talk to us, they get off their phone and like, honey, come here. I just had this conversation with this agent, and I cursed him out, and I told him exactly how I felt. Like, they're not thinking about us. I think that's the number one thing agents have to get out of their head is when you are calling people and you hang up, they are not thinking about you. You literally in their life are a dot, a pin, nothing more than taking a pen and putting it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like literally, it's like that's what a lot of people don't understand. Is like we are not significant in the process when we're talking to them.
Yeah.
But yet we make it feel like all they're doing is thinking about us. And the truth is, if they're not thinking about us, why should we think about them?
Yeah.
For me, when I was coming up, I always realized is that real estate is a numbers game. Every single no gets me closer to a yes. So when you're going through prospecting and you're getting no's or people are saying things that are making you feel good, how do you deal with that emotionally? Because obviously your personality and nature isn't built yet to just want to absorb someone telling you things all day. So tell me a little bit about how you emotionally deal with that. Because I think for a lot of people, they don't know how to emotionally handle rejection.
Yeah, I think maybe take it back even a step before that is don't take it personal. And again, it's not about me or you. If you can put yourself in their mindset, like, hey, this stranger just called, make the conversation about them. Ask questions about them. Let them start talking, because as soon as we start calling and we're trying to be salesy and try to get them to buy and agree with our services or our products or whatever, if we start asking questions about them, they open up and they're less defensive. So I think having that mindset is, again, it's not about me. It's what can I do and how can I start this conversation and make them know that I'm thinking about them and I want to find more about them and let them talk. Because when you ask questions, people will talk.
Right.
I may only say 15 words in a 15-minute conversation,
right,
because I'm just asking questions and they're answering, and they're just going to keep regurgitating and keep talking. So, but to answer the fear thing and how to overcome that, I think it just comes with skill and a mindset. It's like, hey, like I said, it wasn't about me. I think too is, understanding that someone may have a difficult day and put yourself in their shoes, because they may have been extremely aggressive with you, and you can call them 24 hours and it could be 180 degrees different, and like, you know what, my dog died. So you don't know what that person's going through. So I try to just put myself in their shoes and say, maybe they're just having a bad day, and I'll try them again in 24 hours, 48 hours, or maybe even in the afternoon. If I call them in the morning, hey, I called you this morning, you sound like you were going through some stuff. I just want to see, is there anything I could help you with? And they're like, oh, you know what, my fucking dog died or whatever. And it's like, so just trying to put yourself in their shoes and don't take it personal. Like I said, it's just...
Yeah, you see, people don't realize we don't know what's going on. It's funny. One of my agents, Kareem, had said at appointment, he's like, dude, it's hot. Like, call her and pre-qualify her. And, I'm like, why don't I just give her a call tomorrow? He's like, no, call her tonight. I'm like, okay, so I call her up, and she's like, I'm eating dinner. How dare you call me? Don't ever call again. Click. And he's like, oh, man, like, should we delete it? I'm like, nah. I'm like, we don't know what's happening. And literally, we called in the morning. It was like, hey, I was just calling to confirm the appointment for today. Oh, my God, I've been waiting for your call. And it's just like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, literally, at 6 o'clock at night, while she's eating with her family, she's cursing me out and telling me to never call her. And then in the morning, she's like, oh, I've been waiting for your call. How are you? You know what I mean? It's just like, that's people. And that's the thing is like so many people get put off by what people initially say, not understanding like what's actually going on in their world.
Yeah, I joke with my group all the time. It's like we deal with bipolar people. They may not be bipolar, but it's just the way it's done.
Oh no, they're bipolar. They're bipolar. They're bipolar. You get sellers that 1 minute they love you, 5 minutes later they're calling and then they're like cursing you out.
Yep.
You got buyers that say, "Oh, I'm gonna buy the house. I love it. I've been waiting all day," and then the next day, "Oh my God, I want to retract the offer." There's just that call reluctance. I mean, people forget that. I mean, when you're dealing with real estate, you're dealing with emotion. You're dealing with one of the biggest investments. I mean, you see people when they buy cars get nervous. You're buying 10 or 20 cars at a time when you look at the price of houses. So it's like, when you do it every single day, I think we get numb to the fact that these are huge financial decisions. And so
100%.
I think from an emotional component, you have to be able to walk people through the process, which means like, you have to know the process. You know what I mean? And I think, as an agent, your personality and learning how to handle someone's emotions, how to handle their stress, and being able to facilitate a place where they can talk to you. Because I think one of the number one reasons why people don't convert people is their relationship is such that their client doesn't feel comfortable being open with them about how they actually feel. So, what do you do in your own business to make your client feel when you're working with a buyer or a seller that they honestly can tell you they walk into a house, I hate it, without pretending that they like it? Because creating an open dialogue with the client feels that they know you well enough that they can be truthful about how they really feel, I think is one of the most critical components to being a successful agent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of being a psychologist and
100%.
figuring out like, is this person more analytical or are they more emotional? And once you can identify your client's personality and their strengths and weaknesses, then you can kind of formulate a plan or a strategy how to get them to their end goal. And being open line of communication and having those early conversations to figure out what are their goals, and then building that strategy and walking them through and educating them through the entire process. And there's times where you'll show properties, you're like, oh, this is a home run, they're going to love it. Yep. And they hated it, and you're like, what the heck? And then there's properties that are like, there's no chance they're going to even want to go see this, and they end up buying it. So I think it's just, identifying, their strengths and weaknesses and personalities, and how do you figure out, the best solution for them at that time. And like we said earlier, they just may have had a bad day, so maybe now's not the right time to talk. Let's jump back on the phone, first thing tomorrow morning.
Absolutely.
And then just kind of reconvene and circle back.
I think, when people are showing properties as agents, I think you have to remember, stop giving your opinion. You don't know what they feel, what they want. I mean, I remember early in my career walking in and I showed this lady the perfect house. And she's like, you know what? It just doesn't feel like home. I'm thinking like, this has everything that she wants. And then we walk in here, and I'm not lying, in the master bedroom, there was Big Bird wallpaper. And I was looking at it, I was like, what do you think about the Big Bird wallpaper? And I was saying it kind of facetiously, like, it's ridiculous. And she was like, you know what? I love it. It reminds me of my childhood. Like literally when I was a child, I had Big Bird wallpaper, and it feels like home. And I remember like looking at her and thinking like, you want to keep the Big Bird wallpaper? Like, really? And it reminded me that day of just stop trying to think what the buyer wants. Our job is to ask questions to facilitate them telling us what they want, because it doesn't matter what we think. At the end of the day, if you want to sell real estate in high volume, it's always about what the customer thinks. And I think through questions, that allows us to pull out. It gives them open dialogue. Because the more they talk about what they like and don't like, the better you can help facilitate selling them on the things that they want.
Yeah, I think one of the things I do is when I'm meeting with a client to list or sell their house, or even buying, when I first meet with those clients, is we do a tour of their house. And what I'm doing is I'm actually observing the house. Like, I look at the closet. I can tell someone's personality by their style, how they, organize, and it just helps me figure out what they're looking for. And I did learn early in my career, take your personal opinion out of it, because I remember walking into a showing and I'm like, oh, this is terrible. You guys don't want this. And they're like, no, actually we love it. And I'm like, well, lesson learned. Don't open your mouth. Just let them, walk through, and then let them give you the feedback. Don't go into it early thinking like the answers to the quiz when you don't. So
it's funny, one of the first houses that I ever sold, I remember I was a brand new agent, and this guy walked in. He had jeans on, like a wife beater shirt, like a gray beard. It was kind of dirty. He looked like he was homeless. And I'll never forget, he said he wanted to see a house. So we went into this small little conference room. And back then, we had a big book. We didn't even have an internet. And we're going through, and he's telling me, and the house was like $1 million. And I'm looking at this guy and looking at the thing, and I'm like, so I literally went out and I showed, this guy the house. And then I remember coming back and I'm like, do you want to buy it? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, how do you want to buy it? And he's like, cash. And I'm looking and I'm like, you got $1 million amount of cash, And it was just a reminder, in my head, because, when he walked in initially, I'm like, there's no way that this person can afford a house. And then literally a month later, he's buying $1 million house with cash. So I think it's so important to not try to prejudge people or prejudge what people think, in terms of what they want, because truthfully, we really don't know what they want. You could take a buyer in the perfect house and they're like, I hate it. And then you take him into something is smaller, has none of the features they want. And they're like, you know what? It feels right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, it's we think we go in as we're the experts and we're the advisors. And, sometimes they love the location, maybe not the house so much, or they love the house and not the location. So it's whatever fits their needs. And,
right.
It's ultimately what our goal is, to find the perfect home for our clients and give them choices, and then let them make the decision. And then we go, work on their behalf to make sure that we can get the best deal possible for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know one of the things that me and you were just speaking to a little bit earlier was about, creating goals. And I was telling you that, a goal is nothing more than it's a marker. It's like a race. The goal is one of the finish lines. And along the process, there's many goals. We were talking about creating a 5-year goal. And I was telling you that to get to your 5-year goal, you need to really think about where you need to be in your 3-year goal, which is really where you need to be in your 1-year goal, which is really where do you need to be in 6 months. And to hit your 6-month goal, you have to look at, in the next 3 months, what do I have to do? And then obviously it starts to, what can I do in the next 30 days to hit that goal? So tell me, what do you do to try to prepare yourself as you try to scale out what you want to do over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think for me, being in corporate America and being a product line manager, so we were developing business plans for $250 million categories. And, it was, we were on Wall Street, and we were never shocked that we beat our quarterly expectations, because we were already working 2 years out for our business plan and development. So that same mindset kind of still works for me in real estate. Is, I'm still building out my 5-year goal, my 3-year goal. And then you do your daily goals. So when you're doing your daily goals and disciplines, you're not going to be surprised when you hit your goals at the end, because you've done the work and you've been disciplined enough, and you already knew, you built the strategy, you just executed it.
Right.
So you shouldn't be surprised if I have a $25 million a year goal, or $100 million, or $500 million. If you build that plan and strategy and you do the process that's going to get you to that path to success, you shouldn't be surprised that you hit your goal.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that stops people from ever achieving the goal is that, they focus so much about what they want to do in the moment. You have to realize something. When you think about a 5-year goal, one of the things you said is, I like to make $5 million. So when you think about $5 million, a lot of people, thinking about money, it's $5 million. There's not a real attachment to it. You really have to think what would you do with the money? So, if you think 5 years from now, $5 million, what are a couple things that you could actually tangibly do if you had that kind of money?
Yeah, I think it goes back to earlier, having that conversation with the wife and family, and these are the goals that I want to set out for the business. And you know, it may take me away from the family. So are you guys comfortable with that? And making sure that everyone's on the same page. And exactly that. Let's have the conversation. When I set these goals out, are we going to Italy every summer? Are we going to Spain? What do we do? Are we skiing in the Alps in the winter? You know, these are the tangible things or memories that you're going to create with your family. Yes, $5 million, it's just money, but it's, you know, what you want to do is whether it's, you know, for retirement, school education, building memories, and just creating a better lifestyle for your family and knowing that everything's going to be all right.